My name is Lauren Hayes. I'm 28 years old, and I'm a lieutenant in the United States Navy. I was born in a small coastal town in Massachusetts, where the ocean was as much a part of our family as the blood in our veins. I've been serving for 6 years, following in the footsteps of my grandfather, Admiral William Hayes, a man who commanded respect across the 7 seas and, as I recently discovered, held secrets as deep as the ocean he loved so much. This is the story of how I discovered that the legacy I thought I knew was just the surface of much more turbulent waters. The news came while I was on an aircraft carrier in the Pacific. My grandfather's death wasn't exactly a surprise. He was 82, and his health had been declining for the past 2 years. Even so, I felt like I'd been punched in the gut when I opened my father's email. "Lauren, your grandfather left us last night, peacefully in his sleep. The reading of the will is scheduled for 3 weeks from now. He, specifically, requested your presence. I'm trying to get your leave." 3 weeks later, I landed in Boston with a 10-day leave and my dress uniform in my suitcase. I didn't know why I needed to be at the reading of the will, but when a Navy admiral leaves specific instructions, you follow them, even if he's already gone. My grandfather's house was in Rockport, a picturesque place where Victorian mansions perch on rocks overlooking the Atlantic. His house, the Anchor, as he called it, was an imposing 3-story structure with an observation tower that overlooked the entire coastline. I grew up running through those hallways, imagining tales of naval battles and lost treasures, while he smiled from his worn leather armchair, telling true stories that were more fantastic than any fiction. When I arrived, the house was already full. My father, Thomas Hayes, a university professor of naval history, the academic sheep of the military family, hugged me tightly in the entryway. He would be proud to see you with those insignia, he said, adjusting the collar of my uniform. My mother, ever the family diplomat, moved among the groups of people, mostly retired military personnel and their spouses, all in their finest formal attire, as if they were at a Marine Corps ball rather than a few. My 2 brothers were there too, Derek, the eldest, a Marine Corps captain, and Martin, the youngest, who broke military tradition to become a doctor. But there was tension in the air. My uncle Richard, my father's younger brother and the troublemaker of the Hayes family, stood in a corner, drinking whiskey like it was water. He had a calculating look as he watched everyone, especially me. There had always been a rivalry between him and my father, and by extension, he never hid his resentment of my close relationship with the old admiral. "The rising star of the family," Richard said, raising his glass to me as our eyes met. "Let's see if the old man left you that antique compass you admired so much." I ignored his comment and headed to the library where the will reading would take place. It was then that I saw a figure that made my blood run cold. Standing near the window, looking out at the choppy sea, was Eliza Montgomery, or, as she was known in the family, the Ex. Eliza had been briefly engaged to my grandfather about 5 years earlier, after my grandmother's death. She was a striking woman, at least 20 years younger than him, with a frighteningly vast knowledge of naval history and a charm that won my grandfather's heart. But the engagement ended abruptly, amid rumors of betrayal and missing documents. We never learned the full truth, only that my grandfather remained secretive for months after. "What is she doing here?" I whispered to my father. He shook his head, as surprised as I was. "I have no idea. The lawyer said the will had some ... peculiarities." The lawyer in question, Mr. Reynolds, a man as ancient as the law books he carried, cleared his throat and asked everyone to take their seats. My grandfather's library, with its walls covered in ancient maps and shelves filled with books on naval battles, seemed the perfect setting for what was to come. "We are here for the reading of Admiral William Hayes's will," Reynolds began, putting on his reading glasses. "The Admiral left specific instructions on how to proceed." Richard snorted audibly from the back of the room. "Let's get this over with." I'm sure the old man divided everything equally among his children, as any reasonable person. It was then that my grandfather, through Reynolds's words, dropped his first bomb. "I, William Hayes, in good soundness of mind, declare this to be my last will and testament. Before detailing the distribution of my assets, there are conditions that must be observed. The full reading of this will only take place in the presence of my granddaughter, Lauren Hayes, and ... quotes Reynolds' pause, looking over his glasses at Eliza, and Eliza, Montgomery. A murmur ran through the room. Eliza remained impassive, as if she had already expected it. Furthermore, Reynolds continued, the main contents of this will only be revealed after the opening of my personal safe, the combination of which only Lauren knows. All eyes turned to me. I was as confused as they were. My grandfather had never told me anything about a safe, much less its combination. That's ridiculous, Richard snapped, standing up. She can't know the combination of something she's never seen? My father put a hand on my shoulder. Lauren, do you have any idea what this means? I shook my head, trying to process the situation. It was then that Eliza approached, her expensive perfume leaving a trail in her. If I may, she said in that silky voice that seemed made for naval command, William has always been a man of riddles and metaphors. The combination wouldn't be literal with Lauren, but perhaps it's something only she could decipher. Richard laughed sarcastically. And now the ex-fiancé is an expert on the old man. Why is she here at all? Wasn't what she did to him enough? Richard, please, my father intervened, ever the peacemaker. Let's give this a chance. Reynolds cleared his throat again. The Admiral anticipated this confusion and left an envelope to be opened in case there were any questions. He handed me an envelope sealed with my grandfather's personal Creston anchor pierced by a sword. With slightly trembling hands, I opened the envelope and read aloud, to my dear Lauren, if you're reading this, it means I'm sailing in waters beyond the earthly horizon. The safe I speak of is where the stars guided our darkest path. The combination is in the coordinates of our first voyage together. Trust only those who know the true nature of the sea. My heart raced as memories flooded back. When I was 10, my grandfather took me on my first sailing trip. We were alone, and an unexpected storm caught us. Instead of returning to port, he taught me to navigate by the stars. We spent the night sheltered in a small cove while he showed me constellations and told me stories of ancient sailors. The observation tower, I whispered, more to myself than to the others. And the coordinates. I closed my eyes, trying to remember the numbers he'd made me memorize that night. 42nd, 39, 35N, 70th, 37, 10 inches W. Richard let out a disdainful laugh. Is this some kind of game? Let's call a locksmith and get this over with. Reynolds shook his head. The Admiral was very clear. Only his granddaughter may open the safe otherwise. There are alternate instructions that distribute most of his assets to maritime charity. The atmosphere in the room grew even more tense. My grandfather had effectively placed us in an impasse where I was the only solution. Let's go to the tower, I suggested, determined to find out what my grandfather was planning. The observation tower was my grandfather's personal sanctuary, a circular room at the top of the house, with windows in every direction and antique nautical instruments scattered throughout. In the center was a navigation table, and above it, a detailed model of the solar system that he used to teach me about stellar navigation. The safe must be hidden here somewhere, my father said, beginning to examine the walls. While everyone searched, I approached the planetarium model. It was there we'd spent hours after that storm, him explaining to me how the stars were the eyes of lost sailors, always guiding us home. I turned the model, watching the planets move in their orbits, until something caught my eye. The small Earth had a barely discernible line around it. I pressed lightly, and a soft click echoed through the room. A section of the wall slid away, revealing a built-in safe, Derek muttered. I approached the safe, which had a digital keypad for entering the combination. Without hesitation, I entered the coordinate 423-9357033710. The safe beeped positively, and the door opened. Inside were only 3 items: a worn leather briefcase, a small wooden box, and an envelope with my name written in my grandfather's unmistakable handwriting. Hand that over, Richard demanded, holding out his hand. Don't even think about it, my father said, interjecting. Lauren, what does the envelope say? I opened the envelope and found a single sheet of paper with a brief message. Lauren, inside this folder are secrets I've kept for decades. Within the box lies the key to a future I trust only you to protect. Read the documents alone first, then decide who deserves to know the truth. Eliza's presence is necessary, for she holds the other half of the story. Trust her judgment, as I always have. Remember, not everything that glitters in the sea is treasure, and not all treasure glitters. I looked at Eliza, who wore an enigmatic expression. Why would my grandfather trust her after what had happened? I need to read this myself, I declared, grabbing the folder and the box. Absolutely not, Richard protested, his face red with anger. This is family property, not your personal diary. My grandfather burst into the room through the words I had just read. My grandfather sneered, "Stand aside," at the reading of the will. I found myself repeating those words aloud as I looked directly at Richard. Attorney Reynolds cleared his throat again. Actually, the Admiral left explicit instructions about that as well. Lieutenant, Lauren has the right to examine the contents alone for up to 2 hours before sharing them with the family. What about her? Derek pointed at Eliza. Why does an outsider have special privileges here? Eliza, who had remained silent until then, finally spoke. I'm not as strange as you think, Captain Hayes. Your grandfather and I shared more than a brief engagement. Richard let out a harsh laugh. Of course. I bet that's why he kicked you out of this house after he caught you snooping through his documents. A dangerous glint flashed through Eliza's eyes. Looks can be deceiving, Mr. Hayes. You may find that not everything you've heard is true. The tension in the room was palpable. I clutched the folder and box tightly to my chest. 2 hours, I said. After that, I promised to share everything relevant to the family. My father nodded. Fair enough. Let's respect my father's wishes. Reynolds checked his watch. In that case, I suggest we resume in exactly 2 hours. Please, everyone, please go down to the lounge where refreshments will be served, while the others reluctantly descended. Eliza stood still, looking at me. We should talk, she said simply. Why? So you can manipulate me like you did my grandfather? I replied, unable to contain my bitterness. A sad smile touched his lips. William predicted you would react this way. But there's much more to this story, Lieutenant. Much more than any of you know. I hesitated, torn between curiosity and distrust. Finally, I made a decision. My old room, 15 minutes. Come alone. She nodded and left, her heels echoing on the wooden floor. When I was finally alone, I realized my hands were shaking. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the responsibility my grandfather had placed on my shoulders. Whatever was in that folder would change everything. Of that, I was certain. I went down to my old room, a small suite on the 2nd floor overlooking the ocean. It hadn't changed much since my teenage years. Shelves filled with swimming trophies, books about sea adventures, and a telescope pointed at the horizon. I placed the briefcase and box on the bed and sat down, unsure where to begin. The folder looked more promising. I untied the drawstring that held it closed and opened it. Inside, I found a collection of documents, old photos, and what appeared to be a diary. The first photo made me stop. It showed my grandfather, much younger, next to a man I didn't recognize. They were on a pier, with what appeared to be a submarine in the background. I turned the photo over and read the note. William and Anton, USS Barracuda, 1962. I'd never heard of Anton or the USS Barracuda. I continued to examine the photos. There were several of the same submarine, some with crews, others with technical details that made no sense to me. Then I found a letter. The paper was yellowed with age, but the ink was still legible. Dear William, Project Poseidon has been approved. Your proposal for the navigation system has been accepted. Congratulations, you have just secured our place in naval history, even if we can never talk about it. Stay the course, Admiral Jackson. Project Poseidon? What navigation system? My grandfather had never mentioned anything like that. I continued leafing through the documents, growing increasingly confused. There were technical reports on something called autonomous stellar navigation, circuit diagram, and complex mathematical calculation. And then I found something that made my heart skip a beat. It was an incident report, dated September 5, 1963. USS Barracuda missing during exercise in the Bermuda Triangle. 85 souls on board. Search and rescue in progress. Attached to it was a handwritten note from my grandfather. I should have been there. Anton took my place at the last minute. My fault. A knock on the door pulled me away from my documents. Eliza. I quickly hid the folder under my pillow and went to answer it. She entered without waiting for an invitation, elegant in her simple black dress, that somehow seemed perfectly suited to both a funeral and a business meeting. "You started reading," she stated, not asked. "How do you know? It's written all over your face." The confusion, the shock. She sat down in the chair by the window. "What have you discovered so far?" "Something about a submarine called the USS Barracuda and a Poseidon project." A faint smile appeared on his lips. "So he really saved everything. Good. What does this have to do with you?" "These events happened decades before you were born." She crossed her legs and studied me for a moment. "I'm a naval historian specializing in Cold War covert operations. I met your grandfather at a conference where he was speaking. He noticed my specific interest in the Barracuda incident and approached me afterward." "So you approached him about a missing submarine?" I asked, unable to hide my skepticism. "At first, yes. It was legitimate research. The disappearance of the Barracuda is one of the Navy's great unsolved mysteries. But then I discovered something disturbing. Evidence that it was no accident." Felt a shiver run down my spine. "What do you mean?" Eliza leaned forward. "Project Poseidon wasn't just a navigation system, Lauren. It was a revolutionary technology that could have changed the course of the Cold War. Your grandfather was the lead engineer behind it." "That doesn't explain why you broke up," I countered. "Or why the family believes you betrayed his trust." She sighed. "Your Uncle Richard caught us in your grandfather's office. We were reviewing classified documents William had saved. Richard assumed the worst, that I was spying and your grandfather. Well, he didn't correct that impression." "Why?" "Protection," she said simply. "For me and for him. The fewer people who knew what we were investigating, the better." I shook my head, still unconvinced. "And what exactly were you investigating?" She looked out the window at the choppy ocean. "Sabotage, Lauren, and a high-level cover-up. Your grandfather believed the Barracuda didn't disappear by accident. He suspected someone within the Navy had sabotaged the submarine to prevent Project Poseidon from succeeding." This was too much to process. My grandfather, ever the exemplary patriot, suspecting treason within the very institution he so proudly served? "That's hard to believe," he said finally. "Examine the box," Eliza suggested. "William said he would leave the definitive proof there." I hesitated, still suspicious of his intention, but curiosity got the better of me. I picked up the small wooden box I'd taken from the safe. It was finely carved with maritime motif waves, shells, and, in the center of the lid, a compass. The box was locked, but there was no sign of a key. "Try the coordinates again," suggested Eliza. I examined the box more closely and noticed a pattern of small, barely visible buttons around the compass. I pressed, in the coordinate sequence 423935703710, and heard a soft click. The lid opened, revealing a red velvet-lined compartment. Inside were just 3 items: a modern USB key, surprisingly new in contrast to the box's antiquity, an antique gold key, and a small twisted piece of metal with what appeared to be a partially legible serial number. "The USB key must contain the files he gathered," Eliza commented, stepping closer. "The piece of metal looks like a fragment of the submarine." I picked up the piece of metal. It was heavy for its size, as if made of some special alloy. The partial number was PN0713. How would my grandfather get a piece of the submarine if it disappeared? Eliza gently touched the fragment. "That's the point, isn't it? Officially, the Barracuda was never found. But your grandfather may have discovered something no one else knew." I looked at the golden key. "And this? What is it for?" "I'm not sure," Eliza admitted. "William never mentioned a second key." I put the items back in the box except for the USB key. "I need to see what's in here." "Your time is running out," Eliza warned, glancing at her watch. "In less than an hour, everyone will be waiting for answers." I took my laptop out of my bag and inserted the USB. A single folder appeared, titled Poseidon. Inside were dozens of files, scanned documents, photos, reports, and a video file called watchfirst.mp4. I clicked on the video. The screen went black for a moment. Then my grandfather appeared, sitting in his chair in the library. It appeared to have been recorded recently, perhaps weeks before his death. "Lauren," he began, his voice strong despite his frail appearance, If you're watching this, it means you've found the courage to trust your instincts, despite the doubts others have surely planted. First, let me say I'm sorry for dragging you into this, but you're the only one I can completely trust. He adjusted his glasses, a familiar gesture he always made before telling an important story. In 1962, I was a young lieutenant just like you are now. I was assigned to a top-secret project called Poseidon, a revolutionary navigation system that used an algorithm based on star patterns to allow submarines to remain submerged indefinitely without needing to surface to recalibrate. It was decades ahead of its time. He paused, taking a sip of water. My best friend, Anton Petrov, was another engineer on the project. The week of the final test, I became seriously ill with pneumonia. Anton volunteered to replace me on the maiden voyage. The submarine, USS Barracuda, disappeared without a trace during that test. Officially, it was declared an accident, either equipment failure or natural disaster. My grandfather leaned closer to the camera, his gaze intense, but I never believed it. The system we designed was foolproof. I began investigating quietly, and for years, I found only dead ends. Then, in 1997, a fisherman in St. Lucia found strange metal debris in his nets. The Navy quickly confiscated the materials, but not before I managed to contact the fisherman and obtain a small fragment. It was from the Barracuda, Lauren, proof that it didn't disappear in the Bermuda Triangle, but thousands of miles away, near the Caribbean. My heart raced as I realized that the fragment in the box was this piece of evidence. For decades, I've tried to uncover the truth. Why was the Barracuda so far from its test range? How did it get there if the navigation system failed? I've found fragmentary evidence that Project Poseidon may have been deliberately sabotaged, not by the Soviets, as one would expect during the Cold War, but by an insider, someone who feared the technology could shift the balance of power in unpredictable ways. He sighed heavily. When I met Eliza Montgomery, I recognized in her the same determination I had to uncover the truth. Her research had come surprisingly close to the truth, and I decided to share what I knew. Together, we were able to connect pieces that I never could have connected alone. And then we discovered something disturbing. My grandfather's expression turned dark. The sabotage was ordered by someone codenamed Trident, a high-ranking naval officer with powerful political connections. The documents on this USB drive contain all the evidence we've gathered. But most disturbingly, we've discovered that Trident is still active, even after all these years, and has an interest in another modern project with similarities to Poseidon. He adjusted himself in his chair, looking suddenly older and tired. Lauren, I'm not asking you to avenge Anton or clear my name. I'm asking you to complete what I started. Find out who Trident is and expose the truth about the Barracuda. Eliza has connections who can help, and I've left substantial resources to fund your investigation. He smiled slightly. As for the will everyone is so eager to hear, yes, there are properties and money to be distributed, but my true legacy is the truth I leave in your hands. The golden key opens a secret compartment in the cabin of my sailing ship, the North Star. There you will find further evidence and instructions. He leaned forward again, his eyes shining with an intensity I knew well. Trust your training, Lauren. Trust your instincts. And remember, not every enemy hides behind enemy lines. Sometimes, they're sitting at the strategy table. The video ended, leaving a heavy silence in the... I looked at Eliza, who had watched the video with me. Her expression was a mixture of sadness and determination. He recorded this on my last visit, 3 weeks before he died, she said softly. I didn't know he'd kept a fragment of the submarine all the years. My mind was spinning with questions. Who could this Trident be? And what modern project did he mention? I'm not sure, Eliza replied. For the past few months, we've been investigating a list of possible suspects officers who held sufficient authority at the time and still have connections to the Navy today. The list is in one of the files. I quickly opened the digital folder and found a document called suspects.pdf. There were 5 names, all with the rank of captain or higher in 1963. All still alive, though now quite elderly. One name caught my eye. Admiral James Harrison, I read aloud. He's a close family friend. He's come to all my promotional events, and he's the current Special Assistant Secretary for Historical Naval Operations, Eliza added. A seemingly ceremonial position, but one that gives him access to classified files from decades past. A loud knock on the door interrupted us. My Uncle Richard's voice sounded on the other side. Time's up, Lauren. Everyone's waiting in the library. I looked at Eliza, making a quick decision. I'm not going to tell them everything. Not yet. She nodded in approval. Wise. We don't know who we can trust. I turned off my laptop and tucked the USB key into my uniform pocket. I put the wooden box and the document folder in my backpack. I was ready to face the family, but not to reveal my grandfather's secrets. Not until I fully understood what was at stake. When we entered the library, all eyes turned to us. My father looked worried, Derek looked curious, and Richard looked furious. Finally, he said sarcastically, "The naval princess has deigned to pay us some attention." "Richard, please," my father intervened. "Lauren, what? Did you find out?" When we entered the library, all eyes turned to us. My father looked worried, Derek looked curious, and Richard looked furious. Finally, he said sarcastically, "The naval princess has deigned to pay us some attention." "Richard, please." My father intervened. "Lauren, what did you find out?" Reynolds, the attorney, cleared his throat. "If I may, I would like to proceed with the official reading of the will, now that Lieutenant Hayes has reviewed the private documents." I nodded, taking my place beside my father. Eliza sat discreetly in a corner, ignoring the hostile stares of the rest of the family. "Admiral Hayes's will," Reynolds began, "provides for the following distribution of assets. To his son, Thomas Hayes, he leaves the sum of $1 million and his collection of rare books on naval history. To his son, Richard Hayes, he leaves the sum of $1 million and his vacation home on Cape Cod." Richard smiled, satisfied. Could see the calculations in his eyes. The house was worth at least $2 million. To his grandsons, Derek and Martin Hayes, he leaves the sum of $500,000 each and divides equally his collection of antique weapons and military decorations, as per the attached list. My brothers exchanged glances. It was a generous inheritance, but no major surprises. To his granddaughter, Lieutenant Lauren Hayes, Reynolds continued, pausing dramatically, leaves the yacht North Star, the sum of $2 million, this prime property in Rockport, and all the items contained in his personal safe. A stunned silence fell over the room, followed by an outburst from Richard. "This is absurd," he roared, standing up. "The girl earns more than all of us combined? What kind of sick favoritism is this?" "Richard," my father said firmly, "that was my father's wish. We will respect that. I won't respect anything." Richard slammed his fist on the table. "I'm going to contest this will." Clearly, the old man wasn't in his right mind, leaving so much to a girl he'd barely seen since he enlisted in the Navy. Reynolds remained impassive. The Admiral anticipated such a reaction and left a personal letter for you. "Mr. Richard, I suggest you read it before making any legal decisions." He handed a sealed envelope to Richard, who snatched it from his hands. As my uncle tore open the envelope, Reynolds turned to me. "There is one more item, Lieutenant. The Admiral left specific instructions that you should receive an additional envelope to be opened only in private." He handed me another envelope, this one heavier than the first. Richard finished reading his letter, and his face had visibly paled. Without saying a word, he crumpled the paper and stuffed it into his pocket. "Is there a problem, Uncle?" I asked, genuinely curious about what could have silenced him so effectively. "None of your business," he muttered, avoiding my gaze. He turned to Reynolds. "I withdraw my objections." The sudden change surprised everyone. What had my grandfather written that had tamed the ever-combative Richard? Reynolds concluded the reading of the will with a few minor details: donations to naval charities, pensions for former crew members, and a fund for the upkeep of the military cemetery where my grandmother was buried. As for Mrs. Montgomery, Reynolds finished, and everyone turned to Eliza. "The Admiral leaves the sum of $500,000 and the exclusive rights to publish any material related to their joint research, subject to Lieutenant Hayes's approval." Another murmur of surprise ran through the room. Joint research? Publication rights? The pieces were starting to fall into place for the others, albeit in a distorted way. "So that was it," Derek said, looking accusingly at Eliza. "You were using Grandpa for some book or documentary." "It's not that simple," Eliza replied calmly. "It never is," my brother countered. The meeting was officially adjourned, but the tension remained. As people began to disperse, I noticed my Uncle Richard intently observing the interaction between Eliza and me. There was something calculating in his gaze that made me uneasy. I stepped out onto the deck overlooking the ocean, needing fresh air to gather my thoughts. The sun was beginning to set, painting the sky with hues of orange and purple. I opened the second envelope Reynolds had given me. Inside, I found an electronic car key and a card with the Tesla logo. "Your grandfather bought this 3 months ago," my father's voice said behind me. He came closer, leaning on the railing beside me. "He said it was a gift for you when you got back. It's parked in the garage." I looked at the key in my hand, feeling a pang of emotion. A last gift from my grandfather. "Dad," I began hesitantly, "did you know anything about the USS Barracuda?" My father frowned thoughtfully. "The missing submarine? Dad once mentioned he'd lost a friend on it." "Why? I think there's more to the story than we know." I chose my words carefully. "Grandpa was investigating the disappearance, even after all these years. That would explain your obsession with old naval archives," my father mused. "And perhaps your acquaintance with Eliza Montgomery. She's a naval historian specializing in the Cold War. You don't seem surprised." He smiled sadly. "Lauren, my father always had secrets. It was part of who he was. All my life, I accepted that there were parts of him I would never fully know." Watertight compartments, as he called them. "Watertight compartments," I repeated, remembering how my grandfather used that submarine expression to describe how they guarded their secrets. "What are you going to do?" my father asked, his eyes scanning my face. "I need to go to the sailboat," I replied. "There's something there he wanted me to find." My father nodded. "The North Star is docked in the same place as always. The keys are on the usual hook in the kitchen." I hesitated for a moment, then decided to ask, "Do you trust Eliza?" "I don't know her well enough to trust or distrust her," he replied diplomatically, "but I trusted my father's judgment. If he trusted her enough to include her in his will, there must be a good reason." At that moment, Derek joined us on the deck, his face tense. "Martin just left with Uncle Richard," he reported. "It seems they're going to a bar in town." Richard seemed strained. "What do you mean?" I asked, agitated. "Making several calls. I heard him mention something about reporting something to someone." I felt an alarm go off in my mind. If my uncle was truly involved with someone powerful, perhaps even this mysterious trident, my window to investigate might be closing fast. "Derek," he said urgently, "I need you to do me a favor. Take Eliza back to her hotel in Boston. Make sure no one follows them." My brother looked at me in surprise. "What's going on, Lauren?" "I'm not sure yet, but Grandpa entrusted something important to me, and I need time to figure out exactly what it is." Derek, ever the soldier, needed no further explanation. "Consider it done." "And then what?" "Then call Commander Wilson at the naval base. Tell him I need access to the Project Poseidon files. He'll know what it's all about." My brother nodded, his eyes reflecting concern, but also confidence. "Be careful, little sister." "I always do," I replied with a half smile. While Derek went to find Eliza, my father handed me the keys to the sailboat. "Lauren," he said, his voice serious, "your grandfather always said the sea keeps secrets better than men. Whatever you're searching for, remember, sometimes the most treacherous tide seems calm on the surface." I nodded, acknowledging the warning. "I'll be back before dawn." The North Star was a magnificent 50-foot sailboat, custom-built for my grandfather 20 years earlier. It was his refuge, his sanctuary at sea, and now it was mine. The marina was quiet when I arrived, most of the boats already empty with the arrival of autumn. The full moon illuminated the path along the pier, reflecting on the water like a natural beach. I climbed aboard, feeling the familiar rocking sensation beneath my feet. How many voyages had I made on this boat? How many lessons had my grandfather taught me on this deck? Navigation, U.S. sailors, patience, and always, the importance of trusting my instincts. The main cabin was spotless, as if someone had recently cleaned it. Probably the maintenance service my grandfather hired. I turned on the lights and looked around, wondering where the secret compartment the golden key would open was. The sailboat had numerous hatches and storage compartments, all seamlessly integrated into the sleek design. I began searching methodically, opening each door, examining every corner. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary or hinted at a hidden compartment. After nearly an hour of frustrated searching, I sat in the captain's chair, the same one where my grandfather spent hours gazing at the horizon. What was I missing? My eyes fell on the compass embedded in the dashboard. It was a beautiful antique piece, which my grandfather had insisted on keeping even when all the boat's instrumentation had been modernized. A compass never lies, he used to say. Electronics fail, batteries die, but the compass always points north. The North Star, the name of the ship. I stood up and examined the compass more closely. The compass rose was exquisitely detailed, with the cardinal points marked in gold against a navy blue background. North was marked by a small golden star. I pressed lightly on the star, and to my surprise, it sank slightly. A soft click echoed through the panel, and a small opening appeared next to the compass, a keyhole discreetly integrated into the design. I took the golden key and inserted it. It turned smoothly, and an entire panel on the captain's side slid aside, revealing a hidden compartment. Inside, I found a waterproof metal box. Using the same key, I opened it. The contents left me speechless. A Sig Sauer P226 pistol with a silencer, several passports with my photo but different names, a wad of cash in various currency, and an electronic tablet sealed in a waterproof case. My grandfather had planned everything, not just an investigation, but a possible escape. I turned on the tablet. It was password protected. I tried the coordinates again, but it didn't work. I thought for a moment and tried. Antontraus 1962, Anton Petrov, USS Barracuda, 1960. The screen unlocked. The tablet contained only a custom app. When I opened it, a map appeared showing the Atlantic Ocean with a specific area marked in the Caribbean, near St. Lucie. A note read, "Approximate location of wreckage, based on fisherman's report." There was also a folder titled Modern Connection. I opened it and found documents about a current naval project called the Neptune Program, a next-generation underwater navigation system that used artificial intelligence to map ocean currents and magnetic fields. The project's lead engineer was Dr. James Harrison Jr., your Admiral Harrison's son. I was so absorbed in my discoveries that I didn't notice the slight rocking of the boat, indicating someone had climbed aboard. When I finally heard footsteps, it was too late. I turned to see my Uncle Richard standing in the cabin doorway, a gun pointed directly at me. "Found the treasure, I see," he said, his tone casual in contrast to the threat of the gun. "Uncle Richard, what are you doing?" I asked, my mind racing to calculate my option. My grandfather's pistol was in the box, just inches from my "Protecting long-held interests," he replied, stepping forward. "Your grandfather couldn't let go of the past, and now you're following the same dangerous path. Are you Trident?" The question escaped my lips before I could contain it. Richard laughed, a humorless sound. "No, dear. Niece, I'm just a messenger. Trident is far more ... higher than I'll ever be. So you work for him," he concludes, stalling for time. "Why? Money?" "At first, yes," Richard admitted, looking around the cabin with interest. "Your grandfather was always the golden child, the family hero, and me, the loser who couldn't even complete Navy basic training. When Trident approached me in the 80s, offering a way to finally stand out, I accepted." "What did Trident want from you?" "Information. About what your grandfather knew, who he contacted, how close he was to discovering the truth about the Barracuda." He shrugged. "It was easy work for decades. William never suspected his own brother was spying on him." I managed to discreetly reach the edge of the box, my fingers touching the cold metal of the pistol. "What now?" I asked, still stalling for time. "Now Trident wants that tablet and any other evidence his grandfather left. The Neptune program is about to enter testing, and we have ghosts from the past haunting the present. I'm not giving anything away," I declared, my fingers closing around the pistol grip. Richard sighed. I told them you'd be as stubborn as your grandfather. That's why I came prepared. He shifted slightly, revealing a small device clipped to his belt. I recognized it immediately. A tracking transmitter. Who else is coming? I asked, now genuinely alarmed. A cleanup crew, he said calmly, to ensure that all traces of your grandfather's obsession disappear once and for all. Unfortunately, that includes you, niece. Just then, I heard the sound of another boat approaching quickly. Time was up. In one fluid motion, I pulled the pistol from the case and aimed it at my uncle. Years of naval training took over steady hand, controlled breathing, total focus. Put down your weapon, uncle, I ordered, my voice firmer than I felt inside. Richard looked surprised, but not intimidated. You're not going to shoot me. We're family, just like you and Grandpa were, I replied coldly. Didn't stop you from cheating on him for decades. His face hardened. You don't understand what's at stake. I understand you helped cover up the murder of 85 sailors, I retorted, including Grandpa's best friend. A dark glint flashed through Richard's eyes. The sacrifice of the few for the good of the many. That's how it works in the real world, Lauren. The approaching boat was almost alongside the North Star now. I heard voices and the sound of equipment moving. I needed to act quickly. Last chance, uncle. Lower the weapon and help me expose Trident. Richard shook his head. Impossible. He's untouchable. No one is untouchable, I replied, quickly thinking of a plan. Not even an admiral. Richard's eyes widened slightly. I'd guessed right. Admiral Harrison was indeed Trident. But before he could verbally confirm it, we heard heavy footsteps on deck. Too late, Richard muttered. Not for me. In one swift movement, I slid to the side and flipped the emergency switch near the electrical panel. Immediately, all the boat's lights went out, and the emergency alarm began to blare. A loud, piercing sound designed to alert other boats. In the momentary confusion, I darted for the side hatch. A narrow exit I knew few, but my grandfather and I knew. I squeezed through the cramped space as I heard my uncle shouting and men storming the cabin. I emerged onto the side deck, into the darkness shielded only by moonlight. Without hesitation, I silently dove into the cold water, carrying only my waterproof tablet and pistol. I swam down the pier, using the skills my grandfather had taught me years ago. When in danger at sea, use the sea as your ally, not your enemy, he always said. I stayed hidden among the wooden pilings, watching. 4 men in dark suits were searching the North Star with tactical flashlights. Richard was gesturing frantically, pointing at the water, at the boat, clearly frustrated by my escape. One of the men, apparently the leader, picked up a radio. Even from a distance, I recognized his military bearing. They weren't mere henchmen. They were trained operators, possibly from the Navy itself. The situation had escalated beyond a simple family investigation. This was a high-level operation to silence the truth about an incident that occurred decades ago. I held still, controlling my breathing in the icy water as I planned my next move. I needed help, but I didn't know who. I could trust? Derek? Eliza? How deep did this conspiracy go? One thing was certain. My grandfather had chosen me to continue his mission for a reason. I would not disappoint him. When the men finally emerged from the sailboat, carrying the metal box and other items they'd found, I waited another 20 minutes before carefully swimming to the nearby pier. I climbed aboard, soaking wet and shivering, but determined. The North Star was now empty, probably under surveillance. My house now. Technically, my house was certainly being monitored as well. I couldn't go back to either place. I pulled my waterproof cell phone from my uniform's waterproof pocket and hesitated. Who could help me without putting me in more danger? Finally, I made a decision. I typed a message to Eliza. I found what he hid. Trident is real. Don't trust Richard. I can't go back. Meet me tomorrow, 10 a.m., where the fisherman found the star. Come alone. I sent the message, then removed the phone's battery and SIM card, disposing of them in separate trash cans. I couldn't risk being tracked. I took off my soaked uniform and put on civilian clothes I bought at a 24-hour convenience store. I paid cash, with my hair pulled back under a cap and sunglasses. Even at night, I no longer looked like a naval officer, but just another tour. I took a taxi to a small inn nearby, where I checked in under one of the assumed names from the passports my grandfather had left, Jennifer Carter. I paid for 3 nights, in advance, in cash. In the simple but clean room, I finally allowed the reality of this fully sink in. My own uncle had pointed a gun at me. Powerful people wanted to silence the truth about the USS Barracuda, and I was alone, on the run, with only fragments of evidence and many unanswered questions. But he also had the determination of a Hayes and the legacy of an admiral to honor. I sat up in bed, opening my tablet again to examine the files more closely. If I was going to take on a decades-old naval conspiracy, I needed to understand exactly what I was up against. The Neptune program, according to the document, was publicly advertised as an ocean mapping system for scientific research, but the technical specifications contained in my grandfather's files told a different story. The system could, theoretically, detect and track any submerged object anywhere in the world. If it worked as designed, it would make all submarines in the world, including American ones, detectable and vulnerable. Why would the U.S. Navy develop a technology that would eliminate its own strategic advantage? Unless the program had a hidden purpose other than what was advertised. Leafing through more documents, I found intelligence reports suggesting that the original Project Poseidon had been sabotaged not to prevent its success, but to ensure only a small, select group had access to the technology. The USS Barracuda hadn't sunk, it had been deliberately redirected to Caribbean waters, where its technology was transferred to a secret facility on an uncharted island. This would explain why fragments were found near St. Lucia, far from the original testing area. But what happened to the crew? Were they transferred to another ship, or eliminated as unwanted witnesses? The possibility sickened me. But if true, it meant that Project Poseidon not only existed, but continued in development for decades, evolving into the current Neptune program. A faction within the U.S. Navy had created a global underwater surveillance capability and kept it secret from the American government people. The implications were terrifying. As I absorbed these revelations, another question occurred to me. Why had my grandfather waited so long to act? Why get involved now, after his death, instead of exposing everything while he was still alive? The answer lay in the last folder I found on the tablet, simply titled Final Evidence. They were medical reports dated 6 months ago. My grandfather had been diagnosed with terminal cancer. He knew he was dying and decided to use his final months to organize all the evidence and prepare his final plan. Tears streamed down my face as I read his personal notes. I can't die carrying this guilt with me. Anton and the others deserve justice. Lauren is the only one with the courage, intelligence, and position to expose the truth. She is stronger than she thinks. I hope one day she understands why I chose this path and forgives me. Involving her, I wiped away my tears. There was no time for grief now. My grandfather had entrusted me with this mission, and I would complete it. My plan began to take shape. I would need help. I couldn't face Trident and his network alone. Eliza would be crucial with her journalistic contacts, Derek with his military connections, and I would need irrefutable evidence, something not even a powerful admiral could deny or cover up: the coordinates in the Caribbean. If the Barracuda wreckage were still there, or any trace of the secret facility mentioned in the documents, it would be the physical proof we needed. I glanced at the clock. Almost 3 in the morning. In a few hours, he would meet Eliza and share what he had discovered. Together, we would take the next step on this perilous journey. I lay in bed, exhausted but determined, my grandfather's pistol under my pillow. As I closed my eyes, I remembered his final words from the video. Trust your training, Lauren. Trust your instincts. And remember, not every enemy hides behind enemy lines. Sometimes they're sitting at the strategy table. With those words echoing in my mind, I fell asleep, knowing that when I woke up, the real battle would begin. The sun had barely risen when I woke with a start. Something had awakened me, a sound, a presence. I wasn't sure. My military instincts were on high alert. Silently, I reached under my pillow for the pistol and listened. The inn's hallway was silent. but I heard the faint creak of a floorboard. Someone was trying to move silently outside my room. I slid out of bed, moving in the shadows to the window. I parted the curtains slightly and saw a black van parked across the street. A man inside watching the inn. Too professional to be a coincidence. They found me faster than I expected. Someone at the inn? A facial recognition system on the cameras at the store where I bought clothes? It didn't matter now. I needed to get out of there immediately. I dressed quickly, put away my tablet and pistol, and assessed my options. The front door was being watched. The back door was probably under observation too. That left the bathroom window, which overlooked a narrow alley. It was risky, but I had no choice. I opened the window, mentally thanking myself for sticking to my Navy fitness routine. I squeezed through the tight space and down the drain pipe, reaching the alley unnoticed. Keeping to the shadows, I followed alleys and side streets until I reached a bus station. I bought a ticket to Boston with cash and boarded the next bus, sitting in the back, always on the lookout for any suspicious character. I couldn't meet Eliza at the agreed-upon location now. It would be too risky. I needed to change my plan. In Boston, I'd have more options for hiding and communicating safely. During the trip, I reflected on how quickly my life had changed. 2 days ago, I was just a naval officer doing my duty, and now I was on the run from a conspiracy that reached the highest echelons of the institution I had sworn to serve. But I wasn't betraying my oath. Quite the opposite. I had promised to defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. If Admiral Harrison and his faction were operating an illegal global surveillance program, they were the true traitor. In Boston, my first stop was the New England Aquarium. It was a public place, full of tourists, where I could easily blend in. There was a coffee shop nearby with free Wi-Fi. I bought a coffee and sat in a corner overlooking the entrance. Using the public network, I accessed a disposable email account and sent a message to Eliza's alternate address that I had found in my grandfather's files. Plans have changed. It's not safe at the agreed location. Meet me at the aquarium, penguin section, 1 p.m. Come prepared to travel. Don't use your cell phone. Don't trust anyone. I sent a similar message to Derek using a code we'd developed as kids. He'd understand the urgency without me having to be explicit. While I waited, I carefully observed each person who entered the cafeteria. My life as a naval officer had trained me to recognize threats, but also to remain calm under pressure. It was this discipline that kept me from panicking when I spotted 2 men in suits entering, the same men who had invaded the sailboat the night before. With deliberate movements, I calmly got up and walked out the back, blending in with the groups of tourists heading to the aquarium. I needed to get to the penguin section before they spotted me. Eliza was already there when I arrived, pretending to admire the penguins while her watchful eyes scanned the surroundings. Our eyes met, and she gave a small wave. "They're following me," I whispered as I approached, appearing to be just another visitor. "We need to get out of here. I have a car waiting out back," she replied quietly. "Your brother is inside, armed. He intercepted your message and got there before me." I felt a momentary relief. I was no longer alone in this fight. "Did you find out who Trident is?" Eliza asked as we walked casually toward the emergency exit. "Admiral Harrison," I confirmed, "and he knows we're after him." A faint shadow of concern crossed her face. "That explains the unusual activity at the naval base this morning. Derek said a discreet search warrant was issued for you, citing concerns for your mental health after the funeral." Typical, I thought. Discredit to silence. As we reached the emergency exit, Derek appeared, wearing civilian clothes and a cap that partially obscured his face. The relief in his eyes at seeing me was evident. "We have less than 12 hours, he said bluntly. "Harrison has ordered a naval exercise in the exact area of the Caribbean where we believe the wreckage is. They'll clear the area before we can get there. Then we need a plan B," I replied, as we quickly got into the car parked in the back. Eliza smiled, a smile that combined determination and confidence. "We already have. While you were busy being hunted, I managed to access the documents your grandfather left with me. There's a Naimantan Petrov Jr., the son of your grandfather's friend. He lives in Miami and apparently has documents your father managed to send before the Barracuda disappeared." "Another watertight compartment," I murmured, admiring my grandfather's strategic foresight. He never kept all the evidence in one place. Derek sped onto the highway. "We already have tickets to Miami on the next flight. False names, separate tickets, and I have media contacts just waiting for a signal to release everything, in case something happens to either of us. I glanced out the rear window, checking to see if we were followed. The path seemed clear, but I knew the real battle was just beginning. Harrison and his allies had resources, influence, and decades of experience in concealing the truth. We had only the determination to bring justice and the evidence carefully gathered by an aging admiral who refused to die with his secret. My grandfather knew this day would come, he said, clutching the tablet with the evidence tightly. He spent decades preparing for this moment, waiting for the truth to finally come out. Eliza placed a comforting hand over mine. William was an extraordinary man. He knew you would have the courage to finish what he started. Derek glanced at me in the rearview mirror, his eyes reflecting the same determination. I felt the truth won't stay submerged forever. It's time to bring the Barracuda to the surface, no matter who gets sunk in the process. As the car headed toward the airport, I thought about my grandfather's final words. He was right about everything, about the conspiracy, about the dangers, about the importance of trusting only those who know the true nature of this. And now, with the tablet securely in my hand, the pistol in my holster, and trusted allies at my side, I was ready to navigate the dangerous waters he had mapped out for me. The reading of the will had been just the beginning. My grandfather's true inheritance wasn't the house, the sailboat, or the money. It was a mission to bring justice to the 85 sailors of the USS Barracuda and expose a conspiracy that spanned generations. The game had only just begun, and this time, I wouldn't stand aside.